So looking back at our last meeting when we started talking about the ways to implement and come up with a poetry unit to meet the school-wide writing plan for kindergarten, to get them to produce a poem. Just kind of wanted to look back and look at the things that we've come up with and the outcomes and how we think that worked, if we need to make any changes, for next year, or if we feel comfortable with the unit that we've created here. And like we talked about in the last one, you had some really good ideas when we were thinking about the main concepts of the content that we wanted them to understand. And I really think that we found a way to do that pretty well.
I think so.
We created, between the two of us, we came up with a lot of good examples, poems that we could use with them to get across that idea of imagery and having them create a picture in their mind through the words. Right. Do you think there's any aspects of this area, just this part, that we need to change, or are we comfortable with leaving that in as we move on?
I thought that was really beneficial to them because there were a few that first day who I don't see a picture.
Yes.
I don't see a picture. And through going through it and the process and giving them multiple opportunities, by the end, they all saw the picture. And I thought that was a big improvement from the beginning because one of them anyways is on the younger side of kindergarten.
Yeah.
And he didn't see it at first, but after we practiced and we gave him opportunities, you could tell he came a long way because he was able to formulate that imagery in his mind. So I think that part needs to stay because it made a big difference from the first day to the end.
And I think too, we did a lot of modeling and where we drew the pictures too, and they got to do a lot of pair and share, so they could see that it might have had the same overall content, but everybody saw the poem in a different way.
Exactly.
So the poem that was about monsters, everybody had a monster, but everyone's monsters looked different.
Right.
And I think they really enjoyed that too. They get a little bit of downtime, not so structured, where they can be in charge of their outcome, and I think that's really good.
They also got the chance to express themselves, and they don't get that too often, where they can output whatever they want.
Right, well, because it has to be so structured.
Exactly.
And and poetry just is that way. It is more unstructured, writing or working with it at any level, and I think we got that across. I think they liked that.
I think they liked the individualized, how they could make it their own, and how it was their ideas. It was what they put down on paper. Well,
I agree, and I'm very comfortable with the beginning of that, and then working into the adjective work. I think that's a tougher concept. It just is, and you had some that either got it. I didn't really see a lot of in between. They either got it or they didn't, and I think even working with them in smaller groups, there were some that just weren't ready.
Right, but to be 5 years old, that's a pretty big expectation that we have for them. Yes, it's an expectation that we have, but it's something that we're working towards, and I think that we can extend that far beyond a poetry unit, and we can pull it into to other things that they're doing still, and keep reinforcing that.
Yeah.
But like you said, they either got it or they didn't. But I don't see a reason why they can't all.
Right, and and they all could get there with the coaching. If when we were there with them in the smaller groups, we could prompt and get them to create that. It's just not second nature to some of them. And in the core content, in the program of studies, it does say that they can identify or use adjectives with help from my teacher.
Right.
So I think that that's okay. That they've been exposed to it. If that's the only part that they struggled with, I really think that that's okay, especially since it says in there with assistance or with help from my teacher.
It wouldn't be something that I would remove, though. I think it's good for them to practice. I think it's good for them to have some familiarity with what it is and what we expect. And when we were in whole group, I feel like it was more, certain kids raised their hand and give an example. When we broke it down into small group, you saw more of them blossom.
Yeah,
be
they
able
felt
to
more
put-
comfortable,
to
absolutely.
tell us. But then when we worked with them one-on-one,
Mhm.
you saw a huge difference in the kids who, like, more of them got it,
Mhm.
and more of them were able to tell you because of the dialogue that we could have back and forth.
Right.
So I like that we did it as whole group, small group, individualized. I think we need to keep it that way because it allows for them just to blossom.
Mhm. And I mean, that's just multiple chances for exposure. They're getting it all together, they're getting in a small group, and then they're getting it intensified one-on-one when they're working on creating their own poem. I was really surprised how they did at this aspect here when we did move into writing their color poems and we used the graphic organizer for them to just brainstorm. You know, where they pick their color and then they had to fill up the graphic organizer with the ideas of different things that were that color. They really surprised me in their way to use that and understand how to use it.
Yep.
And I thought by doing that and allowing them to see, okay, I can plan for this writing. We planned one day, I've got all my ideas. And I think even they were surprised. And when they went to transfer it over from their graphic organizer onto their poem sheet, how easy it was. It wasn't overwhelming to them. They had sounded out and written, labeled the one words that they had, brainstormed, and then it was so easy for them to get it here. I think they felt very accomplished.
I liked that not only were they writing the word on this page, but we had them illustrate the word on this page because it went back to that whole imagery thing.
Yeah.
We were able to pull that back in and tie that back into what we were talking about. So for them to write their poem, brainstorm, and illustrate, it seemed like it pulled the whole concept full circle. And I was impressed. I didn't realize kindergartners could do so well with a graphic organizer. I was impressed.
They did very well. And I think something that we can work on maybe to improve this, because we did just have them do on the graphic organizer, so if it was red and they did an apple and they drew the picture of the apple and they wrote apple. So then when they went to transfer, we were trying to get them to include their adjective, like a red is a crispy apple or a big apple. Maybe somehow move the adjective back to the graphic organizer too, and I think that just makes it easier for them to move on to the next step.
I think too, the way that we laid it out in front of them, where they did have the 2 pages, they could transfer it straight across, and it made it a very visual thing for them.
Very linear. They understood. They understand the left to right things, and that was easy for them.
It was
to move
easy
across
for them
the
to
right.
take this and transpose it to here to create their poetry. So I think you're right. They need some way. We need to have them put their adjective that they want to use in with their illustration and where they actually sound out and write the word. Because if we include that, I think it'll be even more smooth, because when they could take it from here to here, you saw them sit and think.
Right.
So if we can have...
It was the pause, and that was the only frustration that I saw, and not in all of them, not even in the majority, but in some, was the taking this, adding the adjective, and getting it over here. So I think if we can just make a note and change that about when we do have them brainstorm, just include that part here, because they've already had the lessons in adjective. They've had the imagery lessons, the adjective lessons, and then that's just kind of like the next step, combining those two, and then
Make
the final
this
product.
The final. I think that's a good idea, to have them come up with that adjective to go on with that word when they're just doing this. Because sometimes it can be daunting for you to have the 2 pages in front of them. And I saw a few of them, if they had to write this one down and then think and write it down and then go back to here to...
Just too many steps.
So if we can narrow that down 1 page, I think, or to just the 2 pages, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, then I think we've got a good kindergarten poetry unit that we have created out of this, and
I think it meets all of the things that the school wanted us to be able to do.
Yeah.
And wants them to leave kindergarten doing.
And they have, I feel very happy with the product, with the poem that we have to put in their cue folders, in their writing folders that are going to move on with them. I feel that it's not just thrown together, that not only did they didn't just write it, they understand that this is a poem. They understand it's a poem because It has imagery. It uses adjectives. You know, no R's don't rhyme, but they understand that a poem doesn't have to rhyme. And those are the big ideas that we pulled out of the core content. And I really feel that through what we created, the unit here, that they got those.
I think so, and I think
I'm
they're
very
proud
happy.
of themselves.
I think they were too.
seem proud of themselves.
Yeah, they were authors and they wrote a poem and
Yes.
they enjoyed that. Well, yay! I'm very happy with that.
I am too. I think it's a fun unit.
It is.
And it's something that they enjoy. They really like to sit down and picture those things.
They did.
The
They got into it.
monsters, they really enjoyed.
Yeah.
You know, seeing their own monster and then transferring that to paper and then seeing our monsters
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
created. They thought it was fun.